and welcome once again to another video episode review for The Wind in the Willows. Apologies for the lateness with this one. To be honest, I had a bit of a technical problem here. Our electrics at home unfortunately went today, not completely, but we had some problems with our trip switches, and I remember thinking, well, if we get this sorted today, it's very appropriate for today's episode because it's Mr. Toad's telephone, of course, from series 3. And those of you who know this episode know very well that Mr. Toad gets into all sorts of scrapes with wires and electrics and so on. So, yeah, very apt. So apologies for the lateness, but without any ado, let's dive straight into it. I shall press play now. So, just pressing play right now. Okay. So, we're bang in the middle of spring here in 2019, and this one is certainly feels like a kind of middle of spring type episode. I love this one because it's to me it's not only a great example of like a typical Toad episode, you know, getting conned by the weasels and has a new craze and the latest fad and all that. But I also I just love the scientific angle on it. I mean, there's a few episodes like that, obviously centering around Toad, but there's a few episodes like this, and I remember talking to Brian Truman about his scripts and how he found this book on Victorian inventions that obviously would have, you know, continued into the Edwardian period, and they used this book for reference. So he found it and he provided it for the model makers at Cosgrove Hall, and he'd find like the latest inventions and he'd come up with ideas for episodes through that. So what would Toad want? What would Toad, you know, be able to afford to get? You know, he'd always want the best of the latest thing, whatever it may be. And telephones, of course, are very apt for that period. And those the telephones that we see in this most probably would have come from that book. So yeah, so here we are then. So we've opened, as the narrator said, it's spring, and here we are at Toad Hall. I love this shot here where you can see the inside of the hall. I mean, must have been a lot of depth there with the set. And there's good old Mr. Toad working on his latest craze. Nice to see Mole helping him, and of all the characters, it would be Mole, wouldn't it? I mean, he's very well selected, I think, to help. So this is Mole. You know, obviously Mole he's not very scientifically minded, but it's very clear here that he knows more than Toad does. It's typical Toad, like acting like he knows what he's doing, acting like, you know, he's realised that there's no wires, and this is the centre of the whole episode, really. Needing the wires to be able to kind of, you know, run the telephone and get it all working. So sadly, we don't see the telephone pop up in future episodes. It's quite nice that you can see it installed in it there in the hall, but we don't actually see it there. So we assume that at the end of this episode, he's given up with it and not bothering anymore. I like it. It's just a nice little feature, isn't it? You know, nice to have it there. Now I love the animation in this one. I should have grabbed my little guide here to the crew, so we have to look at this. So yeah, so this is Jackie Cockle directing this, and of course we've got Sue Pugh and Paul Berry, two great animators. And so talking a bit about Paul Berry's animation, you can see here how, you know, he would have done Toad. Pretty much most of Toad would have been Paul Berry in this, and you can just see how uncluttered it is, how very clear it is. You know, when Toad hits a pose, and the mouth and the eyes are moving, it's very uncluttered. There's no kind of movements that shouldn't be there. It's very smooth, very slick, and that's an animation style of this series. You know, even Mole there, you can see it's very pose to pose, very clear. I just love that. I always appreciate, of course, animation that reads really well. Not as keen on animation that's kind of, you know, moving all the time. You know, even tiny movements. It's all very well, but it can look very dead and very lifeless, basically. So that waistcoat there, that exists in the archive. Nice to know. So, so this is this dialogue here. Trying to choose his words carefully and keeps getting it wrong because we know he's talking about the weasels. So he's trying to make out to Mole that he's not going to be conned. You know, he knows what he's doing. He's got everything under control. But of course, we know, and Mole really knows that he doesn't. And that's Toad always trying to cover himself. And there's more great examples of that later in the series. So that's a shot we don't see often. Not that often. The outside of the weasel's den is particularly so wide as well. I love the lighting there. I mentioned lighting before and how it was developed and thought of more as the series progressed, but at this point, so this is series 3, I felt that they were really pushing the lighting a bit more. You get the sense here that there are trees around them, you know, just with those shadows and things, and then the very harsh light, harsh spring light, hitting the puppets there. And then of course a little bit of a blue tone there. Gives it a dark edge, of course, because he's talking to the weasel. So this is great comedy again. You know, we haven't talked too much about double acts between the weasels, and this is one of the well, the first ones I'm reviewing. The first examples of the weasels really kind of. Yeah, well, you haven't heard so much from the henchman yet, but we will in a moment. It's very funny. So there we go. So here we go here, the henchman. So that's an ongoing joke. You know, the chief weasel making out that the henchman has got a pain in his foot, which obviously is the result of being kicked by the chief. And again, that is something that's developed more in the series as well. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is series 3, but it is actually one of the earliest examples of that real double act of the weasel. It's funny, but yeah, as I'm sure you know, there are even funnier episodes as well. So we've had that joke established with the kicking of the henchman's leg developed here. So great comedy timing, and that's what I admire about it. You know, about the recording. You know, the recording between the actors would have been really great. And, I always imagined sort of David Jason with Brian Truman doing these weasels. They must have had so much fun. Well, it sounds like they do. I mean, it's just work to them, isn't it? But the animation of Toad's eyes there. So that piece of music you can hear is a track called Coming Home. A rare track, not released on CD, but I do have a copy. So we saw there in a shot there, Ratty had his telephone actually installed on the wall, if you spotted it there. So this is Toad getting very aerated. All he wants is for everybody to be able to communicate with him. No one else is that bothered. So talking about the animation again, I think Ratty is beautifully animated here as well. You know, those close-ups. That's what I love about this series. You know, you can have an extreme close-up, and it's such a feast for the eyes. Even a close-up, the quality of the puppets, of the, you know, those sculpts, those original sculpts, that would have been done in clay, of course, and then moulded. And you know, look at the fur on Ratty. There's so much to look at. And it's one of the big reasons I love this series. I mean, a lot of other animation, you can look at it, but you know, yes, there are new things to see every time. But when you look at this, there's definitely something new. I mean, I've seen these episodes so many times, and I always see something new, whether it's the animation or the textures or something in the costumes that have been chosen, or something in the set. You know, there's always, like in the shot like that, there's always something to look at. Now, what's interesting about this now is he's talking about wireless, and Mole earlier said that he has heard of wireless telephoning. Now, wireless telephones, to my knowledge, wouldn't have existed unless I'm being stupid. But in 1908, around that time, yeah, that's only recent, very recent history. But Ratty, of course, said their telephones have to have wires, so maybe we assume Mole didn't really know what he's talking about. But maybe if you could leave comments, can correct me on that. I don't know, to be honest. Now, what I might like about that animation there is you can see the henchman's doing something. He's peeling what looks like a parsnip or something. And it's always nice to see that, you know. It's a lot of the time in these episodes, admittedly, it does feel like the characters are just there talking to each other. They're not getting up to much else. And there they've given the henchman something to be doing, so he's just sort of getting on with life. We saw him cutting there when he was talking to Toad, and I really like that. And then having the knife there as like a prop. And of course, in other episodes, you see Ratty, Mole, and Badger probably playing a game of some sort while Toad going on about another craze or something. So it gives them something to do, and that's important in animation. You give your character something to do. Toad doesn't need anything to do because he's there with purpose. You know. Should point out as well, his jacket there is what's known as the jacket from the Rusty outfit that we've seen in previous episodes. Now look at this shot, just wires everywhere. That music there, that's a track called Silent Comedy, another one not released. So Ratty and Mole, being the good friends that they are, they're getting involved. A bit of violence there from Mole there. Obviously an accident, but and that's a set we don't see too often as well. This is outside Mole End. You can see the Mole End sign at the back there. And here comes Badger. So just when you thought here's Badger in this episode, he walks in just at the right moment. So shots like this I admire, this one over here of Toad. So obviously in animation you're not always looking at the character that is talking. And that's what keeps it realistic, like a drama. So occasionally we have shots like that of Toad where he's sort of reacting to what's being said by another character. You see less of that in kind of preschool shows, but with something a bit more mature like this, it's getting that timing, the timing of the reactions is very important. And with Toad being such an expressive character, you know, he can do so much with his eyes and tilts of the head to show that he's listening, taking it in, or he's got his own thoughts. And there are, you know, lots of examples of that. And Toad is the most expressive of all of them, really, isn't he? I mean, Badger, probably, despite that beautiful sculpt, you know, there's only so much you can do. You've got those expressive eyebrows and obviously the moustache sort of wiggles when he talks. I've always wondered about the animation of Badger. You know, you've got the jaw opening and closing on the lip sync, and then the animators would have had to wiggle the moustache back and forth just to get the lip sync. Interesting sort of combination of movement there. But Badger hasn't got cheekbones, which is interesting. Well, he hasn't got, you know, you can't get expression out of them. It's all in the eyebrows, really. Whereas all the others do have the, you know, inside like Mole there smiling. Ratty as well. You know, Ratty, it's quite common knowledge that you would have put, or the animators would have put Allen keys into the ears, or one into the side of the puppet somewhere to make one for the nose, one for the mouth to get the extreme smile. And it's a little bit similar when I worked on Fifi and the Flower Tots. We had the characters all had little, you know, slots where you could put Allen keys into to basically make the mouths do that, you know, but you could also move the paddles in the mouths as well. So all these characters had paddles as well. Of course, Toad had the best, you know, having that very large mouth to work with. A mouth that large, you could swallow the other's whole. So I love this now. Toad trying to be scientific, but he's obviously sort of the switch thing. And I love that. What David Jason does there, windy, and he delays it, and you think, oh, he's going to come up with the right word. And all Toad says is the other a bit. Just wonderful. My dad likes this episode. We used to watch these a lot, obviously, growing up, and this is one of my dad's favourites. He remembers this one because my dad's into amateur radio, so he loves. He can appreciate all the wires, everything. You know, he's always putting aerials up and so on. My brother as well. So he loves this one and Toad Astronomer, which is the next one I'll be reviewing, which is in fact the next one in this series as well. Both very scientific episodes. Toad again, just then trying to cover himself. Doesn't want to admit he's tripped over his own wires and tested them for strength. Those who know about film grammar course know about the rule of threes. We have that there. Stupid. He said stupid 3 times before he got. Well, the third one was stupid weasels. That's all pacing. So Brian Truman was a natural with words and getting the pacing right. And a lot of it, as you can see in the script I put up, a lot of it is all there. You know, very little is improvised. Although David Jason was known for improvising, and a 20-minute episode would become like a half-hour episode. You know, recording wise, and they would have had to, you know, cut what they could out. But they obviously wanted to use David Jason and that ability as much as possible. Just the signs of a great actor. The other 3, obviously great actors as well in their own right, but they, from what I've heard, they're very much stuck to the script. They're just from that background. You know, David Jason, like Toad, was more exuberant. That's why he was so right for that character. That sound effect, I love that sound effect there. He switches it to Bell. You know, often sound effects, they go neglected. You know, you kind of, you know, you just accept them, and that's when they work properly. You're not thinking about it, and then like the ring in there. But this is something the editor does. You know, they have to find all these sound effects from a library somewhere. And what I've noticed, looking at Cosgrove Hall shows and other, you know, whether it's Duckula, Danger Mouse, or whatever, I often hear sound effects that I've heard in Wind and the Willows. They obviously, like all studios, like Disney, you hear it across Disney films. They build a library that they always refer to. Toad waiting for Mole to answer, and of course nothing's connected properly. So I said before about the others playing a game. So Ratty and Badger, rather than just sitting there, the director or maybe the scriptwriter gave them something to do. And it was important. And I love those cutaways to Mole End, the nice gentleness of playing chess versus what Toad's trying to do. So there's a lovely kind of pacing there as well. But Mole, I love how Mole's developed as a character, and he's the most loyal, isn't he? Really, in this sense, you know, they're all loyal, they're all good friends of Toad's, but you know, he wants this to work, of course, as well. And Mole, as we know, he would be fascinated if he heard Toad's voice through that phone. He would be fascinated, and the others would be as well. So those sparks, interesting effects there. Nice little effect. Rule of threes again. It rang, it rang, it rang. And then of course fades. So there we go. So yeah, I love that episode. Very it's just typical Toad, isn't it? And I like science creeping in. Again, it's very much, it's in keeping with the period. Technology, you know, it's the beginning of the 20th century, so technology was obviously starting to really develop. Electricity was new, and it's wonderful. I just love how everything is just kept in period, you know, right to the design of those telephones. Lovely little devices they are. I've seen them up close. Brian Truman has one in very good condition, actually, and it's the bells themselves are actually, they look like, to me, and they're not metal. Obviously, they're meant to be metal, and they're painted that way. But they're actually, they look like Kinder Egg. You know those little Kinder Egg plastic things that the toy came in, the little plastic shell. They look like the ends of those, obviously painted. But that's what they feel like. They're, you know, very plasticky and soft, and so deceiving, isn't it? It's all about texture and paint. So there we go. So that's Mr. Toad's telephone. So I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. I do love that one. So as I said before, next week we do have, just check, yes, it is Toad Astronomer, which is the natural next one in Series 3 as well. And we are halfway through spring, so thanks for sticking with me. Please do keep the comments coming. You know, I'll be really grateful for anything. You know, just share your memories, share these videos with anyone you can. My aim is to try and generate a fan base as much as I can. I know there are a lot of fans out there, this wonderful series, so please do leave comments. And yeah, thanks again for joining me, and I will see you next week. Cheers.